All right. Tomorrow, members of the National Assembly will be sitting as a committee of the whole House to discuss the finance bill. Amendments will be introduced, and then they will be debating and voting clause by clause. Clause by clause, okay? Now, that's a big thing. The party with the highest number of members of parliament in the National Assembly is UDA. And the Deputy Executive Director of that party is Brian Higgins Mbugua. He's our next guest. Higgins, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Thank you very much.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
Mambo iko vipi?
Mambo iko sawa.
Unasikia vijana?
Kabisa.
Wanazungumza?
Kabisa.
Okay.
Yeah.
City, please welcome the Deputy ED with the day's proverb.
Yes, karibu sana. Our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, not to be confused with Mauritius. Okay? If you watch your pot, your food will not burn.
If you watch your pot, your food will not burn. Higgins, what's your interpretation of this proverb?
I think if you take good care of your business or issues, everything will be well.
You take good care of issues, everything will be well.
Yeah.
That's a good interpretation, isn't it?
Simple and straightforward, and yes, it is a good interpretation.
Directly. You're watching your pot, food will not burn. Yep. Do you think the government is watching the pot?
Actually, the government is trying to watch the pot amidst a lot of challenges. If you're aware, last year we paid close to 1.9 trillion in debt, up from a projected 1.6 trillion because of the redemption of the Eurobond. You find that counties, for example, they're allocated 400 billion this financial year. And this financial year will be paying the next financial year will be paying close to 1.7 trillion in debt. So you have 1.7 trillion in debt. You have 400 billion going to counties. You have close to 670 billion going to education and other sectors. So when you try to find where to cut, it becomes possibly impossible. Most people usually bash parliament. I say MPs earn a lot of money. We should start by cutting their money. But I'd like to remind them that the entire budget of parliament is only 40 billion out of 4 trillion shilling budget. So we need to have an honest conversation on this issue. And we have to discuss it candidly, without intimidation or coercion. People must discuss their issue. And I'm happy for the first time people are discussing issues. This finance bill has been there throughout. I think the last 2 years, people are discussing finance bill, which is a good thing. That means in the next election, for example, issue of taxation will arise. We will promise Kenyans this, and we'll have to tell them where we'll get the money from. But the government gets money from two sources, either debt or taxes. We've crowded our debt space. We'll remain with taxes. And what the government is doing when they launched their medium-term revenue strategy up to 2026-2027, the president has said he wants to move our tax rate from 14% percentage to GDP to 20%. Because in Kenya, for example, most of our industries are informal. So they're very hard to tax. So you find every time there's a taxation issue, it's always a small pool of individuals which carry the entire nation. And we are trying to widen the tax scope and the tax base for the same.
Brownie, when you listen to the people right now in this agitation, in this movement of reject finance bill and the outpouring of emotion, what do you think people are against? Is it taxation? Is it the rate of taxation? Is it expenditure? Is it management of government, of public finance?
I think they're protesting everything. We have a problem with how the government uses their taxes. People think there's a lot of misuse, corruption, wastage in government. Also, people think that the tax burden has become too much amid the current economic situation. But be as it may, you know how this thing works. the budget is what brings finance bill after it. So the Treasury prepare the budget policy statement, brings to Parliament. Parliament scrutinizes, does public participation, move around county A, county B, asks people which road do you want to be built, which hospital do you want to be built, and everything. So they come up with a budget, of which members of Parliament proudly pass the budget. But they know that the budget must be financed. And this finance bill brings the tax measures to raise the finances to finance the budget. So for the MPs who voted no, it will have been prudent for them to do that from the budget perspective. They say the people are burdened with these taxes. Please remove this road from my constituency, remove this hospital from my constituency, remove this water project from my constituency, so that we can lessen the tax burden. But it's hypocritical for them to pass the budget as it is, increasing their CDF, increasing ABCD, and then refusing to pass the finance bill, because money must come from somewhere. Indeed. And you find that this budget, the way it is structured, the first charge from the consolidated account is debt and their principal. So we try to look, where should we eliminate? We cannot do away with debt. Whichever government is in place, they'll have to pay the 1.7 trillion the next financial year. There's an equitable share for counties. 400 billion is mandatory. We have to pay. We can't slash on that. There's investment in education, 670 billion, of which almost 250 is wage bill for the teachers. We can't slash.
Sorry, Higgins, can I just step in here and ask a couple of things? As you're, going through this list of things that would come about as a result of, they need to be paid.
Yes.
One would then assume that for these payments that you speak of, that because let's just take from last year, 2023, for the year that's ending in the next 6 days.
Yes.
Then that the things you speak of have been paid. Have they?
Yeah, but this finance bill is for next financial.
No. I'm not even going about. I'm talking about last year.
Yes.
Because if we're going to use the same argument and apply it to 2023, so everything has been paid. Yes. Let's take education, for example.
Yes.
Talk about 670 billion shillings.
Yes.
Has all the capitation for education for the year 2023 was it paid?
I guess so. It has been paid.
I can tell you for sure that it has not.
Maybe the development bit.
Capitation that was supposed to go to schools for term 1, 2, and 3 in the year 2023 did not go to schools in completion. And when schools closed in November last year, before we went to write KCSE, there was still pending money that was not paid at the end of the year. We started this year, right? 2024, that's halfway into the financial year, with a debt that had not been sent to capitation. And then we continued for term 1 and still nothing happened. And then the money that was sent from ministry just went towards term 1. Nobody asked questions about what happens to the money that didn't come in 2023. All right? Now, if you look at what has happened over the last 5 years, this 670 billion that you speak of, there is a 10% unpaid amount over the last 5 years of 63 billion shillings that should have gone to capitation. It didn't go. It never goes. Nobody talks about it. That's one example. This is why I asked the question that you say what is supposed to be paid by government is paid, but it is not. So one must ask, where does the money go?
I think you know how government works. It does not have money in the bank account stashed there. Government collects as it sends. That's why there's sometimes a need for, say, domestic borrowing just to balance. But the time government does not have money.
Who does an audit? Because I think this is established that some of the monies that you speak of have not been paid. And I don't think we can argue about that. We can do an analysis. But who does an audit? Let's just talk about the year 2023, 2024 that ends in 6 days.
Okay.
Who does an audit of the monies that were said were going to go 650, 670 to education, 400 to the counties? I believe there's still some money that's being waited for from the counties in terms of the release.
Yes.
So who does an audit of this money that's supposed to go? Because it comes from taxes, no?
If you check, the counties received all their money by end of the last financial year, We're still 6 days before the end of the next financial year. Now, we should not confuse what is budgeted for and what is
what actually goes. Okay.
Because you've seen even KRA sometimes they miss their targets. So there are some things that will go back through supplementary budgets. Maybe they do the reduction. Say the 63 billion that did not, you say that was not paid. I'm sure there were some few supplementary budgets in between that try to regularize the government spending. So everything is dependent on the revenue we collect. We might budget for 4 trillion, we fall short with 500 billion. It does not mean the government must send that money if it doesn't have that money. We budget for a specific amount of money. Then you look for project how much we will collect. We project how much we will cover the deficit with debt. But now the problem comes, the debt we can get the entire bit of it in the market, but the revenue collection, sometimes we might have a shortfall. So mostly some of the government projects that stall is based on the revenue shortfalls that we do not.
Don't you think this is a problem then in the public finance management, Higgins? Because that's what people are complaining about.
Yes.
Look, just going by the example of the last financial year, this is what you're projected you're going to raise as revenue. This was how much you even raised, even after reviewing and revising your revenue targets. Right? KRA did very well. They hit 95% of the revised revenue target. Not revised upwards, but revised downwards. But the budget is not revised downwards. It still remains the same, which means that you're increasing the deficit.
Yeah.
Which means that if you take all that money and you've only collected 2.3 trillion shillings, but 1.9 trillion shillings is going to debt, you're only left with so much that you can run around with. And you know this as you're beginning a new financial year. Why would you do the same? Why would you project that you can raise 300 billion shillings more when you did not even raise 100% of what you had projected to raise in the last year?
And also to add to that, the discussion about taxes is not difficult to understand. The need for taxes, not difficult to understand. But taxes means you are taking money from citizens, but yet the discussion to ensure that there is more money within the government for the government to take, one doesn't hear much of it. What is it that is being done to grow the economy? Even those who've just read 2 or 3 lines of economics will tell you that the one entity that is responsible, this is government. When government spends, when government takes out money, government injects money into the economy grows. When it grows, there's a lot of money. And there's a lot of money to tax. But that discussion isn't taking place. All we hear is money being required, more money being required to be in terms of taxes.
Thank you very much. This is what I love to say. We are in a very tight fiscal space because of the debt. Because for every shilling we collect, we spend close to 65 to 70 cents to pay the debt, leaving us with a small room even for that to be felt in the economy. The issue really is this. This government has decided to take the hard decisions that most government postponed, starting with the Kibaki government, for example. When President Kibaki came into power, there are some things that he did that postponed the problem to the next government. Number one, he increased the retirement age from 55 to 60 years. And if you've seen today's daily, there's that issue of aging civil servants, close to 25%. So Kibaki's kept paying pension and hiring of new civil servants, number one. Number two, Kibaki did not take in more debt, but he sold most of our public assets through IPOs. Safaricom, Kengen, Mumias, Kenyari. He used that model to raise more money. Based on value, they are most of them are moribund. So he sold most of our, because investors will not buy IPO dying companies. So he sold the jewels of our companies. And that was one of his method of raising funds. Then we came to Jubilee government, segmented into two.
Uhuru 2. Okay.
Yes. So Jubilee 1.0 took in some debts, and largely was because of Kibaki did not have county government to send money to. So this is the start of devolution. The Jubilee government started the implementation of devolution, and they had to do a lot of setup through the transition authority. And most of Jubilee debts in term 1, the bigger one being SGR, we could see where the debt went to. We had electricity connectivity from 48% to close to 70%. The road annuity program, in every village you'll find, because we're being allocated by constituency, like 200 kilometer per constituency, mostly. So you'll find during Jubilee 1.0 there was a lot of road tarmacking ahead. They went ahead to an exam on the 2017 election, and they were re-elected based on what they had done. Then come Jubilee 2.0, and they took in more debt than in term 1. And those debt mainly, most of it came during the COVID recovery. And it was used mainly for subsidy, unga subsidy, fuel subsidy. Now we've been able to bring the cost of unga down without any subsidy. Now, those people who are wearing sufurias in the street, they're no longer there because of that. So the thing has shifted. We've been able to bring down the cost of fuel with 16% full VAT and with zero subsidy. Those are the more sustainable way.
So how have you brought down the cost of fuel?
By being prudent.
How?
By being prudent.
In what?
In managing the shilling, for example, the forex, by drafting through the Middle East deal that we received fuel without paying a shilling then, just so that we can have a breathing space. There are a lot of things that happen in between.
That brought down the cost of fuel?
It did. Or do you have another?
Now I'm wondering how that brought down the cost of fuel.
Of course, if the dollar was
so
160...
the G2G deal brought down the cost of fuel?
Yes.
It just didn't make fuel available to Kenya?
No. This is what it did. And this is what we were supposed to achieve.
Okay.
We were in a fix in terms of forex. So we couldn't have enough forex to purchase the fuel. And you know, in terms of a shortage of forex, countries experience high inflation and the issue of exchange rate. So we needed breathing space so that we can bring in more dollars. As we've seen, we've received a lot of dollars from agricultural productivity. We opened up, you remember coffee export was frozen during the reforms. So we exported a lot of coffee. Agriculture sector brought in a lot of dollars. Remittances from diaspora bring in a lot of inflows. And this was a deliberate effort. Previously, there was a decline in the diaspora remittances because of certain factors. For example, those who went to Western world a long time ago, they had lost touch with us in the country right now. For example, my aunties who went in the 90s, their kids now, they don't have any relation with us here. So that sending, that attachment was gone. Now the government has been doing a deliberate effort of exporting excess labor until our economy can be able to accommodate the entire workforce. And those people have immediate family in the country now who are dependent on them. And that has helped increase the
So
forex.
what you're saying, Higgins, is those are the measures that have brought the cost of fuel down?
Partly.
Yes. Okay. If you listen to the people who are out now,
Yes.
Talking about the high taxation, the government spending, and the unchecked government spending, and the response that is then coming from leaders, some of them are your members of your party, right? Are the members of your party responding to the issues being raised, or are they responding to different issues?
I've seen quite a number going to the villages and telling the people why they voted yes. I've seen Didmas Baraza, I've seen the member for Kuresoi, and they're saying the same thing.
What are they saying?
You told us you want this road built. You told us you want this water project. You told us this is what is contained in the budget, and this finance bill is supposed to raise that.
And is this the only time that a budget contains development that has roads, that has water, that has electricity connection? What's different about this budget from the previous budgets?
Especially when we know
there's
that
no
our
difference, by the
borrowing
way.
is intended for development. That's what it's purposed for.
What I'm saying,
So what are they saying that is different now?
it's not different now. What I've said in the last 2 years,
Yeah.
the first time people are debating this thing, the finance bill has always been there. Last year.
What I'm
the
asking
previous-
is,
yes,
are your leaders being truthful to the people?
they are being
When
truthful.
they say, you told me you want a road, and that's why we are increasing the taxes that you're paying this year to the taxes that you expect
So
you
we
to
can
pay
give
next
you a
year,
road.
so that you can do the road.
No.
Is it because that there was no road budgeted for in the previous years?
What I'm
Is
saying,
it because there was no water project budgeted for in the previous years, or electricity? Is it the first time that this government is budgeting for roads and electricity
Are
and
they the
water?
first government who are budgeting for these things?
but I'm saying this is the first government that the public are talking about finance bill. So it's the public
And I'm
who are
asking about the response.
But-
The public, we are clear.
Yes, that's what
I'm
I'm
asking
saying.
about the response from the leaders. Like you've said, you've
I'm
quoted
saying-
the leaders, Didibas Barasa, the MP for Kuresoi, and the other MPs, including the MP for Kikuyu.
Yes.
When they're responding to the people,
Yes,
are they being truthful
they are.
in their words?
In fact, it's the people who should look at the two bills together. Say we don't want finance bill. Correct. Yes. Look with the compare the finance bill with the budget. Ask the people. Say this project is not good for us.
Which is why I asked you, Higgins. Are the people only addressing the tax measures, or when you hear the people, are they talking about public finance management as a whole? Are people happy with the budget of 4.2 trillion shillings, or 3.9, or 4.0, whatever figure is in
I've
that budget?
tried to look through.
Are
I'm just
people-
saying reject finance bill.
are
I'm not
people-
saying any. I'm
So
not
people are
saying
okay
any.
with the expenditure.
I'm not saying any specific. They are not giving
Are
any
people
specific.
look, let's ask it this way. Are people satisfied with what they're being told in terms of what is going to be done with this money? Because if we take historical experience, and this is why I asked the very first question that I did,
Yes.
that these things that you list here, have we actually seen that the money has gone? And by your own admission, it has not. Because if you have 100 shillings and 70%, 70 shillings is going towards debt. That means you have 30 shillings to do all of these things that you talk about, in addition to taking care of a thunderous wage bill and doing all the development that you speak of, which is impossible. So it has not been done. And so if somebody tells me today that you're complaining about a finance bill or you're complaining about a budget and we can't see any other reasoning, the reasoning in history is enough for me to be able to say, well, look, capitation in 2022, 2023 did not go in completion. That is enough for me to say that your reasoning doesn't make sense. And that is what Kenyans are talking about today.
Now-
How can you prove, seriously, Higgins, how can you prove that 1 shilling which you told me that would go to roads, I should be able to see a road in completion from point A to point B? And that is what I'm asking. Can we see in an auditing of what budgets do that the money that you said we are trying to raise domestically, Mr. Speaker, sir, has actually gone to that thing? And if we don't have something like that, suffice to say that all this noise is nothing. So that's my question. Can we see a trace from point A to point B? Just take the last year.
Yeah.
The last year.
You know, everything has their own metrics. For example, we have close to 160,000 network of road kilometers. Think of it, less than 20% is tarmacked. So for roads, you can measure by the number of kilometers. You can go to my village, there was no road here, now there's a road here. So the citizen should also scrutinize the budget. This is what I'm saying. Don't separate finance bill from the budget. So that you tell us, last year, this road was allocated this amount. It was supposed to be 20 kilometers of tarmac. I've gone there, there's no this particular road. anyway. Number one. So trying to separate the budget from the finance bill, I don't think is the right thing to do.
Nobody's separating.
My brother, we're saying the same thing.
No.
They are not separating. We'll give you examples
Yes.
of where people have even gone onto social media and
Yes.
they're looking at the appropriations as proposed. X amount of money to go into this and the other and the other, and they're questioning why money should be going there when other areas are getting underfunded, in their opinion. Yesterday, your party leader, the President of the Republic of Kenya, spoke at a church service and he said, we are hearing what the youth are saying. And we are happy that the youth are coming out to engage on matters of governance in this country. And I'd like to tell the youth that, yes, we are going to have a conversation with you so that we can identify, and I use those words because those are the words that he said. He used the words, we can identify your issues and see how to deal with them. Sounds like the president thinks that the youth don't have their have not identified their issues.
I can't speak on
That it's only after the sitting down that we shall identify the issues. Although, anyway, he goes on to say that, let me tell you, we have allocated money, extra money into CDF. We have put in money for CDF. That will now mean that there is more money for bursary support. That there is no money that's going to be used now to build the ICT hubs in the constituencies, which will make jobs available for our youth. We are going to have more money into help. We are going to have more money into this and the other. That is the party leader, the president, the head of the country. Your party secretary general says that these guys appear to have been paid. Appears there's some underhand force behind this.
No. The Secretary General said he'll organize a meeting between the young people and the president. I didn't hear him.
What else did he say?
I didn't hear him say it was
The government spokesman says, we think that there's an underhand deal. The leader of the majority in the National Assembly says, these are people who just don't understand. They're living in a bubble. They are privileged. They do not know the poverty that's in the country. I'm not hearing leaders who are actually saying, maybe there's something that the people of Kenya are saying about how we are managing the country. What I'm hearing and what I've heard in the last 30 minutes of you being here, Higgins, is you saying, you know what, it's you guys who are not getting it. We are putting money to fund a budget, to fund projects that you told us that you want. And you're sticking by that line. And you're not hearing as if people are telling you that we do not think that there's a correlation between the money you want to raise and the projects that we told you and the projects that you're saying that you'll put in money for and the projects we'll see. Again, that's a feedback that is coming out from the people. That there's a disconnect between what we expect, what we have seen previously, and what you're telling us you will do going forward. There's a disconnect. But you're sticking to the same line. Are you not hearing it?
But that's what it is.
What?
Eric.
What?
To cut anything on finance bill, you have to remove something from the budget.
Remove it.
So I'm saying, tell us what to remove. You know, that's why I'm saying you cannot separate the finance bill from the budget. If the budget was good for those MPs who voted no, then they should pass the finance bill. But if there's a problem, they go back because this finance bill cannot stand on its own.
Okay, I think I get what you're saying now. So essentially what you're saying is that if there was a problem, that we take it back to Parliament and they should have actually fixed it. But that the government today really, it's not us. It is the members of Parliament who should actually go and fix what the people of Kenya are saying that they are rejecting here. Is that what you're saying?
No.
And that it lays in the hand of Parliament to actually have that done?
Yes, Parliament has the power to do appropriation. In fact, it's the biggest players in budget making is Parliament.
You also realize that the biggest percentage of representation comes from your party.
Exactly.
And that we saw 100% of that representation vote in favor.
Not 100%.
I mean, almost.
There were
some three, almost.
Absentee.
Almost.
In Parliament,
they were there, but they didn't vote. So there were 3 out of the 200 and some, right?
Yes.
That's what we are saying here.
Yes.
Okay, so almost 100%.
Yes.
But here you are saying that this is these same individuals that we should actually go back to say, you know what, if there was something that you wanted to be removed, remove it then, so that it can actually be sorted out. But this is still my question, and I'd like if you would please be able to just look at this critically. It dovetails on what Eric and that question that CT was asking. You've told us very clearly here that these are the numbers that we've put down and this is what we want to do. And so when Kenyans come out and they say, look, unfortunately, this cannot be, this is what we want. Are you then making the connection with what you're saying? If Kenyans don't want this, remove it. And this is what they want. But even that thing that you've said they want, we are not seeing it. If I met you today, Higgins, and I treated you in a certain type of way, and you felt something as a result of that, what do you think you'll remember 5 years down the line when we meet again? What do you think you're going to remember? What I said or how I made you feel?
How you made me feel.
Absolutely. So if you see in the past that Kenyans said they wanted a road here and all this hullabaloo was made about a budget, and then they don't see that road being made, when you come back to them next time and you say, here we are going to do, what do you think they're going to greet that expression with? Doubt or trust?
Now, unless you give me now specific, this road was budgeted for and it was not done. It was allocated money. Because I still go back to what I'm saying. You go to that budget, you tell me there are some things we cannot touch. Let's say the 1.7 trillion on debt, we cannot touch.
Okay, tell me where that debt went to. There's a perfect example. We know that in Kenya, twice, 2 reasons why you can borrow. And it is one for development, and in the second, it is in the very rare occurrence where you're trying to meet a budget deficit in the time that the financial year rolls over to the next. Those are the 2 instances in which Kenya constitutionally can borrow. Yes? Now, 1.7 trillion is going to debt. We don't have an updated debt register in Kenya. 2019 is the latest numbers that we're looking at. So, I'm asking, this money that is being paid, do we know?
What do you mean by 2019?
The debt register of the country is not updated.
No.
Is it updated?
It's updated. And even if there's a projection even for the debt we'll have next year.
It's updated to which date, which year?
I have not checked the Auditor General's book.
I'm telling you.
It can't be 2019. It can't, because the other time Parliament was going to debate on increasing the ceiling.
We can talk about increasing the ceiling.
No, because
when we talk about a debt register, I'm talking about the United States of America gave you $1.9 billion. This is what it went to do. Now, this is the status of the project. It is complete. That's what I'm talking about.
Other than ring-fenced debt like the SGR one, you cannot, if you give me 1,000, I give you 1,000, we mix it up, you won't tell which one was from which pocket. This is how government works.
No.
Let me say this. This is how government works. Not all debt are ring-fenced. We borrow money, it is deposited into the consolidated account
for
budgetary support.
Not for development.
For development.
Yes. Now, there's one thing I need to tell you.
If budgetary support is paying, it is paying salaries, that is against
That's against the law.
Correct. Correct. Now go to the first charge of a consolidated account. It's debt. Second charge, salaries and pension. Third charge, constitutional offices and judiciary. Fourth charge, county government. So there's an
order of priority.
Order of priority.
That's true.
On how we utilize our resources. Now, half of the debt we borrow domestically, and mainly for budgetary support. One thing that Kenyans must know, there are some expenditure that are recurrent in nature, but they use those metrics to measure how a country is developed. For example, the ratio of a teacher to student or a policeman to the population. Those are boxes that are ticked when you are looking at how a country is developed. The other day, the doctors were on the street for quite a number of days. And Kenyans were urging the government to talk to the doctors and settle their bills. Some of what was agreed with the doctors are factored in this budget.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is this. Please, don't let us not skip the processes. We say finance bill is bad. It's bad. It's okay. But what brings about this finance bill? The budget. Now we go meet COG, Council of Governors, and we tell them the country is in a bad place. Please let us reduce the county allocations from 400 billion. We do 300 billion. We go to the next item. Maybe the government can try and renegotiate on our debt obligation, but the market might interpret it wrongly. You remember when the government said it want to redeem the Eurobond early. Those rating agencies, like of Moody, downgraded the country because it was treating it as default. So sometimes renegotiating of debt might upset the market on some factors. So we have a 4 trillion shilling budget. Please, I'm urging you, even you people, just tell me, we cut this, we cut this, we cut this. That's where the process should start from.
Higgins. So it's 4 trillion, 4.2 trillion is what the National Treasury initially proposed. Came back and said 3.9 trillion. During these appropriation discussions in Parliament, this figure seems to be moving upwards because, like you're saying, MPs are like, I do not want a road to be removed. I don't want this to be removed. Some things that had been removed, like school feeding, had been removed. And of course, you cannot do away with school feeding. So it's all coming back to the 4.2 trillion. It's heading there, all right? Are we saying that even when the president says, let's cut our coat according to the size of our body and all those things, that this is what he means? That the least we can go to is 4.2 trillion shillings?
You know,
when he was the deputy president, the last time he was the deputy president, the last budget that they presented in Parliament as the deputy president and president, the heads of that government, was 3.6 trillion.
Now,
we are at 4.2 trillion.
yes.
And we are saying this is because we cannot remove roads, we cannot remove water, we cannot remove school fees, school feeding, we cannot remove doctors, we cannot remove police officers, we cannot remove this and the other. And if we have anything that we'd like to remove, we should come and point it out to you what we can remove. This budget has moved from less than 3 trillion shillings to over 4 trillion shillings in 10 years because we are doing roads and we are doing water and we are doing electricity. And we really? Higgins.
No. You guys also, you must be reasonable.
Okay.
In this sense. This government has hired additional 50,000 teachers.
Yes.
It is planning to add an additional 20,000 teachers
Yes.
for JSS.
Yes.
The previous government, CBC was brought to life.
Yes.
There was the issue of junior secondary school.
Yes.
There are those infrastructure that must be built.
Yes.
So there are some additional costs. You've said why it has moved from 3.6 to 3.9.
To 4.2.
4.2.
No, but now it's 3.9.
It's 4.
It's 4.2. Okay.
Okay. 3.9.
So there are additional teachers that have been built. There's a capital expenditure
Yes.
on education.
Yeah.
There's an additional 100,000 community health promoters
Yes.
that have been brought in board. So if we really want to understand this thing, we scrutinize the budget line by line.
Yes.
You've said we cannot do away with school feeding program. There's something that CT said here that it's very, very important. In the aggregate demand, government spending is very critical to stimulate the economy. Drastically cutting government spending might bring a shock to the economy. It's akin to a smoker. You're telling him, don't smoke immediately. We've seen the issue of pending bills. The national government is almost 500 billion shilling.
It's more.
I thought it was 600.
It is.
No, I've said for national government, it's 480 something billion, of which almost 80% is owned by state-owned corporation and 16% by ministries and departments. So you find Last financial year, for example, things were budgeted for. Suppliers were called in. They supplied the government, and they were not paid. So you find that we've accumulated a lot of pending bills.
Can you just pause there for a moment? When we budget, this money goes to ministries, at least some of it, doesn't it?
No, for budget is not money, it's just a plan.
No, let me ask my question again. Do ministries get an allocation of money to run their affairs from this budget?
Yes, they do.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
So every year, ministries get money, don't they? So if they get the money, I am assuming they get the money for what it is they've budgeted so that this can meet those needs. Is that not so?
It's true.
So then how do you get the shortfall? And all these things were done.
In fact, that's a question I always ask myself.
So there's procurement outside of budget.
Precisely.
That's criminal, isn't it?
It's criminal.
Has this government taken anybody to court?
What do you mean by government?
This government of Kenya, has it taken anybody to court?
But it's not the work of the government to take people to court.
If somebody has misused money that you've
I'm not saying
allocated
this
to it.
administration.
Yes.
I'm
No.
asking, has the government of Kenya taken anybody to court?
Now, this constitution that we have brought about many institutions. And for the country to really move forward, those institutions should be allowed to work independently. For example, in the US, we saw former President Trump being taken to court. In Kenya, it's almost impossible because of political...
Oh, you can be taken to court. I don't know
So
that
we should ask EACC and DPP why nobody has been taken to court for
because
procurement outside of this.
But Eric, why are we going
there's
that
so
far?
many.
Why don't we just talk about the Auditor General's report?
Yes.
Every other day, the Auditor General outlines with great clarity and detail everything we are saying.
So once the Auditor General releases the report, that's what I'm saying, each institution works start after the other.
Okay.
There's
Has
the control
the
of
government
budget.
interdicted any officer?
You see, the government is not the judge of this is what happened.
Interdiction is an administrative job. That is what the government does. You, for example, today, you as the Deputy Executive Director of UDA, if one of your members of staff does something, you interdict them. And then you invite investigative agencies to
if Auditor General
job,
points to a fault or an issue or some discrepancy, the action that can be taken, among the many things that can be taken, is interdiction. Look, what we're saying, Higgins, is this. Don't misunderstand. It's not that we do not acknowledge that the government does a great deal. But we want you to understand the government should not expect us to pat them on the back for doing what they're supposed to do. That's their job. Okay?
Precisely.
That is what you are supposed to do. Now, what we are saying is when there's a shortfall, the shortfall is this is what we anticipate because you told us you would do. This is what you said, and a budget was allocated for it. And this is not the problem with this government. No. The previous government had their fair share of this. But since it is this government now who are in power, we are saying history is what we are talking about, and it's what's informing us that there is this gap. Now, because of this gap and its continuance, we find the situation we are in isn't getting better, it's worsening. Remember what I said. I do not hear the conversation of how it is the economy is going to grow. Because when the economy grows, this money discussion takes a different turn and a positive one.
Yes.
If the economy isn't growing, then the situation we're in will ultimately get much, much worse.
Exactly. And this is what I'm trying to pass across. We were from a negative. If you deal with numbers, we were from a negative. Now we are at ground zero. We've stabilized inflation. We've stabilized the shilling. We've stabilized the cost of unga. We are stabilizing the cost of fuel. This government has not done any capital expenditure so far. All the roads that were being done were completing the already started program. This is the first time I've seen they've allocated 200 billion toward constructions of road in this budget. I think this is the first budget that will have some capital expenditure. Now, The president has been categorical. He wants by 2027 to have a balanced budget. This time round, we are having a deficit of 600 billion. And the next year, he wants that deficit reduced to 400 billion. The other year, to 200 billion. By the time we're in 2027, 2028, the president wants to have a balanced budget. When this government took over, the fiscal deficit was a trillion shilling. What we were collecting, what we were getting, and what we had budgeted for, the difference was a trillion shilling.
And how much is it this year?
600 billion.
Are you sure?
Oh, this financial year was 800 billion. In fact, 769.
How much was passed by Parliament?
The same amount.
No, 400 billion.
No.
Yes.
No. That one we can check even after this.
We have
because
checked even before this.
So, except last financial year, they said they will borrow almost 355 domestically, and another amount almost similar to it internationally. Just check, please confirm the figures.
Yes.
It was not 400
what was passed
billion.
by Parliament and what was later published by the National Treasury Higgins, those are different documents.
I'm
we are
saying,
quoting what Parliament approved versus what the National Treasury later published.
What do you mean Parliament approved? Because
budget.
Yes, budget.
When Parliament
now check the budget of last time.
The budget with a deficit.
Yes. And the government cannot borrow, even if they add additional borrowing, they'll have to do a supplementary budget.
And we have had to.
Yes.
Our time is up, Higgins. We thank you very much. We'll invite you again. Brian Higgins Mbugua is the Deputy Executive Director of UDA. He's been our guest.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.